Streaming live, this is Tracking the Tropics.
Happy Friday, everyone. Storm Team 8 meteorologist Amanda Hawley here on another special edition of Tracking the Tropics. We've had extra episodes all week long tracking two different tropical waves that had potential for development. The good news, one wave is no longer being watched for development, and chances have lowered for the development of the second wave. And today, again, I'm joined by WFLA's meteorologist Ed Bloodsworth. As always, thanks for joining us, Ed.
Of course.
And I know you've been tracking all morning that first wave anyway, that's a little closer to home, the chances for a soggy today and tomorrow.
Yeah, this wave, this was formerly Invest 95L. If you'll remember that from our earlier episodes this week, and Hurricane Center was initially monitoring this when it was moving over the Bahamas, but since then it moved over, actually it moved over Hispaniola, and the mountainous terrain seemed to have had its effect on these tropical systems. And this system now is still moving over the state of Florida as just an open wave at this point. But what it's doing is it's adding in a lot of moisture to our atmosphere, and we're going to see this help to really enhance just our normal garden variety thunderstorms that we'll get every single afternoon. In fact, the rainfall forecast through the weekend and all the way through next week, you're going to notice those splotches of yellow and orange. That's anywhere from 1 to 2 inches for most areas, maybe 2 to 4 inches in isolated spots, and that's just going to be from those daily rounds of rain that we experience every single day here in the summertime.
And look at how far those yellows and oranges stretch up the eastern coastline there, all the way up and through Georgia, South Carolina, and into North Carolina, because this tropical moisture is going to hang out for a couple days, and then it's going to be swept away by a little bit of a front that's going to come through. But so we're going to see, elevated rain chances not only today, but tomorrow as well, and then in through next week. Our unsettled weather pattern continues.
And so again, that one no longer expect to become anything tropical in nature. This system, this is farther out in the Atlantic, just to get your bearings straight in the lower left of the screen. That's the northern coast of South America. And if you look closely within that broad area of convection or thunderstorm activity, there is still a broad circulation there. It's not quite as defined as it was yesterday, but this is Invest 96L. This emerged off of Africa several days ago and has been crossing the Atlantic, kind of halfway between now the Cabo Verde Islands and the Lesser Antilles. And this has really been struggling in the last 24 hours. If you recall yesterday, the Hurricane Center had this pegged at a 70% chance of developing into a tropical system. But look now, it's all the way down to a 40% 5-day development here. And it looks like, Amanda, we can thank the dust for that.
And we alluded to this yesterday. We showed it to you. It was on the northern side. And I think models today are a smidge further to the north, which means the dust and the center of that tropical wave are going to be a little closer, which is going to inhibit development there. So still a medium chance of developing here over the next 5 days. So still something we're going to be watching, but certainly chances have come down within the last 24 hours, which is always good news.
The lower that number goes, the better. But
we like it.
So this is the look of the European model in terms of the tropical moisture. The areas of green, especially when you start getting into the teal areas, indicates very high moisture. And you can sort of see generally where that wave is going to be located there. Again, we don't see any kind of even really closed circulation with this, at least according to this forecast model, just an area of moisture. But look behind it. There's another wave coming off that the forecast models keep a little bit farther south, maybe a little bit farther, more displaced from that dusty area, that Saharan dust plume coming off of Africa. So long range, that may be something we have to watch, but that initial system, this is by next Wednesday, that sort of blob of green north of San Juan, Puerto Rico, that's 96L, and it doesn't really develop it at all.
You can see it doesn't even have that deep tropical moisture associated with it either as well. And again, that's thanks to that dust kind of just breaking it all apart.
Yeah, so again, this is something that at least a lot of the forecast models are indicating more of a weakening trend over the next couple of days, which is certainly some good news. But in this short term, though, Hurricane Center will continue to be putting out updates here until this system is no longer a threat. But it is certainly something we're going to have to continue to watch as it progresses across the Atlantic. And speaking of that, these are the look of the latest forecast models. It looks like the trend of these maybe has pushed a little bit farther south, just the overall collection is maybe as compared to yesterday, but still no real significant change there. This will be moving on a west and west-northwesterly track over the next couple of days. So maybe some higher wind, some high waves, maybe some gusty winds, and certainly some squally weather expected for the Antilles as it moves in the Lesser, and then eventually the Greater Antilles as it moves towards Puerto Rico and also also towards Hispaniola. So if you've got a cruise in this area, it might not be that great as we head towards the middle of next week.
And it kind of looks like that trend is going to continue with these waves just stacked up behind it. The National Hurricane Center still giving this a modest chance of developing into at least a tropical depression by early next week. So that still could happen, but chances for it actually forming into a named system lowered a little bit.
Yeah, and this is something that we mentioned in the last couple of days. Now that we are in August here, this is the time of year when we typically see the tropical activity in the Atlantic basin really start to ramp up. You see that line, the red line, sort of the climatology for the Atlantic basin. It's very quiet. You're on the low side for June and July, but once we start moving into August, water temperatures warm up. Most of the shear across the Atlantic tends to come down, and we start to see less dust as we progress through the month of August. So that's why typically we see more of these waves that roll off of Africa, part of what we call the Cabo Verde seas and those African storms. And once they move over that warm water, Amanda, it doesn't take long for these systems generally to start ramping up.
It really doesn't. And we can see it on satellite. We're going to track them every single day as they move off the coast of Africa. And hopefully most of them don't develop, which is usually the case, but a few of them, have better environments that they move into for development, which is, again, why the climatology goes up for, again, August and September. And then we have another small little peak there in October.
Yeah, very interesting stats. 61% of all storms form in either August or September. Now, of course, here in Florida, that October peak is very interesting because climatologically speaking for the state of Florida, that's when we have to be actually on the lookout. We've historically had our more significant storms either very early in the season or very late in the season. But again, not to say that's going to happen, but it's just climatologically something that we're always going to have to watch. And of course, we've mentioned it last couple of days. We certainly want to end with this. This is the time as we start moving into our busy part of the season that you really need to start making sure you've got every plan ready to go, your hurricane kits, of course, making sure you know where you're are you living in an evacuation zone? Where would you evacuate to? Setting up plans well ahead of time with family and friends or whatnot. And again, this is just that time to really just start thinking about those final preparations should the time come where, an evacuation order maybe is given for an approaching storm, that you know exactly where to go, because the less confusion in that kind of situation, the better. Obviously, you don't want to be one of those folks who are just, going through into the grocery store and you can't find anything. You just want to make sure you have everything ready to go.
Yep. So heading into this slightly higher activity a couple of months here, you'll want to make sure you have everything ready to go. But for our final thoughts before we sign off, the second tropical wave that we're watching in the Atlantic, those chances of developing have diminished a little bit. They've lowered. The chances are still there, and they're still medium. So don't be surprised when you visit us early next week if we do have a tropical depression, because that's definitely still a possibility. But if we do, of course, we'll be monitoring it all weekend and be back here on Monday to give you the very latest details and any updates if it's warranted. But for now, I think we are going to sign off. Again, Ed, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you guys all, too, for tuning in and checking in with the latest. We'll be back Monday again if we need to. See you then.
Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics. Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics.